Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Victory Road World Cup of Pokémon VGC, sponsored by Elgato, Metafee, and GG Tour. We are back with our fourth and final round of the day, and I am so excited to be seeing trainers in from both China and Australia. Australia finally making it into this qualifier stage. This group stage after a tough qualifiers in 2021 where they were stuck in a group of three against the United States and New Zealand. So I'm sure they had a lot to prove this year, and they are definitely showing it against their opponents in China this week.
Yeah, and what an opponent to have to show up against as well. China, of course, having that connections with most of the world, with Japan, through their location, through America, through Canada. A lot of these countries that have already got well-known players, and they're all coming together to just, put themselves on the map more and more. And China, I believe, were one of the teams that were automatically seeded into our group stage. So a team that automatically seeded into a team that had to come from all the way from the very start to get where they are. And of course, it is a bit of a bittersweet symphony because, Australia losing to their next door neighbours, New Zealand, and New Zealand are the ones who are going out this year. They can maybe have a bit of a little neighbours rivalry there and they can poke fun at that. But the players as well we're looking at, Chengfu and Chris Khan, players that are well known for both their local scene and also in worldwide scenes like NPA, Victory Road, and just the World Cup and other sort of international tournaments in general.
Yeah, and both of these players and their regions really are known for their team building, right? Those in China and the Southeast Asian community as well. A lot of them team build because their format, their circuit is so different to ours. They team build in ways that we don't always see. So one thing I love about the World Cup is being able to see how teams like China and Japan and South Korea, how they build their teams, because it always provides what I feel to be a lot of nice inspiration for a lot of us who are running through our circuit for VGC. And Christopher Khan from Australia, we know him and his brother are both incredible players. So I'm excited to see what they bring to the World Cup this year. And I know you guys were able to see the team previews in between, so you know that Christopher Khan's team looks a little bit funky. And then we are once again getting to see that face off against what also looks to be a really interesting team from China. But both of these players, they are playing for their teams, and they are currently in a little bit of a heated match this week between them and China. China currently, I believe, is 4-3. So China is trying to hang on to what could either be a win or a tie. And if you're Australia, you really want that tie moving forward.
Yeah, Australia getting that tie and showing further and further again that they can take these lovely little wins, the lovely little ties, to get even further in the tournament compared to last season and to show their dominance as a team, as a country that's usually quite excluded to itself. It's got a bit of a connection to the Western world because it has a very similar circuit, but it's been quite secluded. Of course, we can see in their team choices, they're going those big, hard, strong teams to try and get those wins. In the Slowbro team, in teams like the Shadow Rider plus Groudon teams that did really well in America quite recently. Against China with a couple of weird teams and a couple of common teams as well. I see Glycopod plus Colossal, which I saw a couple of weeks ago whilst casting, and it's just something so funky you rarely see it. So that might have been something confusing for Australia, which gave them a bit of an upper hand. It was a 2-1 to Australia, but that one game could have been a little bit of a whisker fin thing when Australia like, oh no, this top team is taking games from us. We have to really think hard.
Yeah, absolutely, right. There's a lot of really interesting team choices. You see the Ice Rider and Groudon is a core that's kind of come up a little bit more. Then you look on the opposite side, and instead of, that Palkia being paired with the Ice Rider Calyrex, it's paired with the Zacian, right? So some Pokemon that you're seeing paired in some different team compositions in some different ways that you're really used to. So kind of forcing you to rethink maybe what you know for those standard teams. And especially when you're playing these players, thankfully, China and Australia are pretty close in terms of time zones. So they're not playing it too far out of the way in terms of their match timing. But you are playing against some incredibly strong players on both sides. Ren Chengfu, the Victory Road February Season 12 Challenge finalist, World Cup competitor last year. China went into top 4. Christopher Khan, North American International Champion in 2017, and Germany Nationals top 16 in 2013. 3 times regional champion, 3 times Worlds Day 2 competitor. So not only is Christopher Khan incredibly talented, he is incredibly well seasoned as a trainer as well, dating all the way back, 2013 before then as well.
Yeah, Chris Khan going way, way back and just seeing all these different locations as well shows that, he has that stamina to go to all these different events, especially Germany, which is way out of his time zone, and take really good finishes there. I do believe he also had a bit of a foray in the TCG as well, so he's got that ability. You know, the mind games of TCG comes with it, and maybe can apply that to video game as well. But you know, this is Victory Road. We're here for all those video game finishes. And looking at these two players, you know, they have the finishes in VGC, but are they going to go head to head? And we'll see who is the upper hand. And you see teams as well, as we saw earlier. It is, you know, variations on teams. We've seen before. Chris Carnes, I will note, is very similar to what his brother used to win EUIC, with a little handy dandy Clefairy there instead of Indeedee. So maybe thinking Psychic Terrain wasn't what we needed. We need that little friend guard to take even less damage, so we do even more with our water spouts. And then Chengfu, you know, going with a team we've seen quite common before, the Groudon plus Shadow Rider, but then it's also very similar to Hirofumi's team, which was Calyrex Ice, and also had, I believe, a Tornadus over the Whimsicott slot.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of TCG, right, there is no Pokemon that epitomes the shady dealings than Shedinja on Christopher Khan's side, and that's a Pokemon you always have to fear. However, facing down the Pokemon on Run's side, probably not a Pokemon you really want to bring, right? Unless it's holding something like that safety goggles, you could still be dealing with some incredibly powerful G-Max Wildfires, any sort of rock type move, even the ghost type moves from Shadow Rider. So at least the nice thing for Ren, Chengfu, is most likely that they realize that Shedinja is most likely not going to be coming, but then you have to deal with that friend guard Clefairy possibly. And we know, especially, Clefairy's been a Pokemon that's been around for years and years and years, how tough that Pokemon can be to just break through. But Whimsicott and Zacian are going to be the lead, and then the Whimsicott and the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So they are optimizing for speed this turn, it seems like.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to the speed tiers, and something that players will really hate to see is if both Whimsicotts, if they have it, going for that taunt, because the fast Whimsicott is going to get the taunt off. That's going to be really annoying, because then the turn after you can go for Tailwind, and opposing Whimsicott is forced to switch out or go for something like a Moonblast or Energy Ball, just do that damage, and that puts it a threat just getting knocked out. And Calyrex is going to love that. It's naturally faster than both these Pokemon without the Tailwind. So if we just see a taunt go off, that is going to be amazing, because it can go for its Astral Barrages, and if it's got the Focus Sash, that is likely to be a nice knockout in 2 or 3 turns onto that Zacian.
Yeah, and I mean, you're seeing, right, if we're looking at this Whimsicott, it's got 2 Dark-type moves, and you have to assume maybe one of them is Switcheroo as well. So you may not want to have to deal with something like that taunt on the opposite side of the field, and possibly hope that you can get yours off before the other. But if you're running from Chengfu's side, you have to be pretty cognizant of possibly what the Whimsicott on the other side of the field can do. But you get your taunt off first, and that means that Christopher Khan's Whimsicott is going to be struggling to get any sort of pressure done, and going for that Astral Barrage into both of the Pokemon on Christopher Khan's side, able to do a great amount of damage. Does not bring that Whimsicott down to possibly reveal something like a Focus Sash, but the Zacian on Christopher's side able to go for the Behemoth Blade into the Calyrex Shadow Rider, brings it down to really low HP as well. So not really getting any item reveals here.
Yeah, going down to 14 HP doesn't reveal any Focus Sash. It could reveal it is a slightly bulkier version of Calyrex. You'll often see that. Often they have like a little tiny bit of bulk in, maybe if they're choice specs and they have the ability to drop its stats, you know, in special attack. We do see the Shedinja scarcely coming in. Maybe, you know, it's going to risk taking a hit from the inevitable Astral Barrage, and Tailwind coming up, meaning it's going to be even more speed on this side. Protect, stopping Astral Barrage, and then it's just going into the Shedinja, revealing what item it has. Could be Sash. It is Sash, given that it did not die just there, and that just gives it time to move for a Shadow Sneak, which can be really annoying for the Calyrex.
Yeah, and something that may reveal as well, maybe for that Whimsicott on Christopher Khan's side, it may also be something like that Switcheroo, right? It could be holding something like an eject button, possibly just trying to get some damage off, or, you know, maybe trying to just switch some pesky item onto a Pokemon on your side of the field, so getting that taunt off can be pretty lucky. However, now you are, you know, contending with Shedinja, who can go for something like an ally switch, but not going to happen if you're able to go for that taunt first. Prevent that Shedinja from doing any tricks, but it is still able to go for that Shadow Sneak, which is going to be plenty of damage to knock out that Calyrex and allow for this Zacian to go for a nice and strong Behemoth Blade into this Whimsicott slot.
Yeah, Whimsicott is going to hold on though if it does have its own Sash. If it has got that eject button like predicting, it doesn't. So that last slot could possibly be Memento, I was thinking, from the Dark typing, which is really fun to see, because you get those double stat drops, and you also get a free switch into what could be a Pokemon that's loving having those drops, like this Groudon, who's super bulky and you just ride off of having all those stat boosts. and then just do loads of damage. Charizard and Groudon though, forced to come in the back here, one of them, and with Kyogre not being revealed yet, Groudon might be left till the end so Charizard can come in and then just do as much damage as possible, and then Rain can be negated with a Sun late in the game, meaning that Kyogre, if it does go into that 1v1, is going to be on a lesser hand if the Groudon gets those special defense boosts.
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? The concept of memento, because you are seeing the focus sash on the Whimsicott. Also, that is nice to see as well, the focus sash on the Shedinja. You can go for that G-Max Wildfire with your Charizard, target into the Zacian slot, get enough damage, even if it goes for something like a Protect, and then just allow for that G-Max Wildfire damage to target into that Shedinja and just knock that off the field early. If the Shedinja can't go for something like an Ally Switch thanks to that taunt, so it may just have to go for something like a Poltergeist or like a Shadow Sneak again. Maybe try and get that knockout onto the Whimsicott this turn if that's maybe something that it's able to go for. But it still kind of puts you in a really nice position because you do have the opportunity to at least get a lot of damage and consistently get some more chip damage down onto the field. Christopher could also swap in something like his Kyogre here, but instead we'll see Ren making the first switch, bringing his Whimsicott out and bringing that Groudon in to get the Sun Up and help boost its partner Pokemon in this Charizard. So if Christopher was able to possibly do a switch of his own, which it looks like he has, could get a weather change in, bringing the Kyogre, getting the Drizzle up, mitigating some of the damage from this Charizard as well, mitigating its solar power output, and maybe forcing this Groudon to go for something like a switch later on in the game. But Ren looks like he's going for that Gigantamax first.
Yeah, go for the Gigantamax. It does open up the options. If we see the Wildfire, that would have been a knockout on the Zacian most likely, and then the chip damage would have knocked out the Shedinja, and that would have been something that is going to be very scary in matchups. If not, maybe if he called the switch in there, could go for a max Airstream and get the speed boost, which would be very nice for this Groudon. It goes to the Shadow Sneak though into Groudon, possibly just trying to get as much damage down as possible. As we do see the Wildfire though go into that Kyogre, so good switch from Chris Khan. And that is going to be really annoying now because it's in its reign, and it can just go for Origin Pulses if the Ally Switch is called correctly. And I did just get told in our chat here that it is Fake Tears on the Whimsicott, so possibly there to help the Regieleki, help the Charizard, and help of course the Calyrex with as much damage as possible, and just break through these bulk Pokemon like Kyogre that is cancelled that special bulk. As Whimsicott comes in, or Chris here can go for those tailwinds now that the taunt isn't really an option on the field. And that's going to be really scary for everything's Pokemon naturally under speed, the Charizard.
Yeah, I mean, it just, like you said with Fake Tears, it goes to show exactly how versatile Whimsicott can be and why it is such a good support Pokemon and why you see it really everywhere. But I do like the opportunity of what you said, right, of maybe going for something like a Max Airstream, targeting down the opposing Whimsicott, just trying to get damage off. You're still kind of contending with the Kyogre, right? So, and we saw the item not revealed, but shown on our side of this Charizard. It's holding that Charty Berry. So it's not holding anything like that Life Orb to possibly increase its power output, and it's not exactly facing down a lot of Pokemon with strong rock-type attacks on Christopher Khan's side of the field. There is no opposing Groudon. There's no... you're not dealing with something that could go for a rock slide here. Instead, Groudon, though, going to switch out, going to bring back that 1 HP Whimsicott onto the field, at least possibly try and get a knockout, allow you to reset the sun later. But it looks like Christopher is matching a Dynamax to that Gigantamax Charizard on the opposite side of the field with that Kyogre.
Yeah, and Kyogre going big this turn is actually really beneficial for Chris because it has one extra turn on its Dynamax factor than Charizard has, and also if any protects happen, it can go through that, and it can set up Rain manually, not having to switch out over and over again where Ren is going for those switches to get the sun back up. Protect from Charizard though, keeping it safe. Tailwind comes out, so if we see maybe a Max Hailstorm into the Whimsicott, that could be a bit scary, but it is actually going to be a Max Geyser, I believe, into that slot. The opposing Whimsicott drops to the chip damage of G-Max Wildfire, and we could just maybe see Tailwind come out from Ren's Whimsicott if it has expired. And there's no fake out, so there's nothing scary about that. Maybe a Shadow Sneak from the Shedinja if it comes back in could be a bit annoying, but that is something that I have to go through. Zacian comes in, and Zacian, it's going to like the rain a little bit, but it's going to like it enough that Charizard isn't able to remove it.
The Shedinja actually did get knocked out by that Wildfire, so thankfully that Whimsicott is safe for now from any priority attacks However, like you said, it's really huge for that Kyogre to actually have gone for that Dynamax. It can reset. It can still force that knockout into that Whimsicott, possibly. That Whimsicott needs to go for something like a Tailwind, though, consistently trying to match the speeds. Keep your Charizard faster than your Zacian. Maybe hope you get that knockout on your Whimsicott on this turn and possibly allow for your own Groudon to come in and maybe boost your Charizard in its last turn of Dynamax. Or possibly, and just at least try and get some damage off. Not the last turn, this would be the last turn of Dynamax, but try and boost that Charizard in its turns following that Dynamax, maybe just to get off something like a Heat Wave into that Zacian and get the knockout. Looks like there was a Tailwind as well from this Whimsicott, matching the Tailwind from the prior turn, and at least going to allow for this Zacian, who's still actually faster even with the Tailwind, to go for a Behemoth Blade this turn into the Whimsicott, get rid of that last HP.
Yeah, so revealing to Ren there that the Zacian is possibly close to max speed or fast enough to outspeed Charizard, because both players do have Tailwind up, and then the Wildfire is going to catch the Zacian, get pocketing into the Whimsicott. Maybe wasn't the best idea because it leaves this big powerful Charizard open to take your knockouts, but then Kyogre is big and powerful in its own, and with the Rain Boost and all this, Charizard isn't going to like that, going to get a knockout, but Groudon, can come in. And it's going to be that weather war we all hate and love to see in Pokemon, because it's going to be, is the sun going to be enough to make it a damage? Is the Precipice Blade going to be enough to weaken the Kyogre? Maybe get a knockout on a crit or a high roll. These players are going to have to be opting for every possible chance here to just kind of pace the game and get that knockout at the end to go into the winner of this game 1.
Yeah, not exactly a Rayquaza to be able to come down into the middle of this match and stop these two Titans from fighting with the Weather War. Like you said, you really kind of have to put out a lot of pressure on this turn before this Kyogre can go for another Max Geyser, possibly in setup. You might just need that Precipice Blades to hit and also get that critical hit, and just making sure it doesn't miss, right? There's no real way to make sure it doesn't miss then besides going and crossing your fingers and wishing really, really hard. So the Precipice Blades going first into the Kyogre does not do enough damage for Ren. However, Kyogre able to fire back, actually going for a max Hailstorm this time, so not changing the weather to water, but still enough for that knockout there. So a really nice way for Christopher Kahn to wrap up this game 1 and take it into a what is going to, I think, be a tough game 2 for Ren to kind of wrap his mind around and change his plans a little bit.
Yeah, Ren now having to, kind of figure out that, Christopher knows that in the late game, maybe just going for Max Hailstorm into the Groudon, just to get the knockout. I do believe we saw Chip on that Kyogre, and that might have been Life Orb, so that does then confirm that, it's going to be having that extra damage on it. So even in the rain, even without the rain, it might have knocked out with a Water-type move, but just playing it safe there.
Yeah, I believe that was that Life Orb as well. I almost commented on it, but didn't, it's hard to make those comments at the end of the game when you're so focused, right? But if you're Ren now and you're moving into this game 2, knowing that you need to at least try and secure a win here, possibly, so that you're not tying against Australia, right? You have to pay a little bit more attention, right? I think the thing that Ren needs to do is possibly protect that Calyrex Shadow Rider a little bit more. I think if you're able to go for more Astral Barrages and kind of allow your Calyrex to steamroll, you may not have been predicting that the Shedinja would come in, right? Because even though it is Focus Sash, it doesn't exactly love facing down a lot of the Pokemon on your side of the field. And so the fact that it did come in and was able to get that Shadow Sneak off, I think might have kind of thrown a wrench in Ren's plans, Ren Chengfu's plans, because it was not exactly maybe the Pokemon you expected of all the Pokemon on that side. If you are able to get up some extra damage from that Wildfire, then you can stop that Shedinja from really kind of being comfortable switching into the field if it was not already on it. So, I think it's going to be a little bit more important this turn, but instead we see the Clefairy come out with that Zacian, so I think maybe that Shedinja might have gotten left behind, and this Clefairy is going to be able to help out its partner Pokemon, whereas Whimsicott is trying to help out the Charizard as well.
Yeah, and in this lead, it looks on paper that Ren Chengfu can just go for maybe a Fake Tears plus a Max Wildfire just to get a knockout, or it can opt to pocket into this Clefairy not wanting to take this damage much as well. Of course, it does play a lot of mind games straight away because Follow Me exists, and Friend Guard might be just enough to keep the Zacian alive. So Ren is gonna have to be thinking, what do I go? Do I go for a taunt, stop the Follow Me, or does he go for maybe a Fake Tear to guarantee knockouts on something? It is going to be very scary this first turn, and if we see a switch in come in from the Kyogre. Kyogre coming on that Zacian slot, and it'll have the buff of its rain, and it'll have the buff of the Friend Guard, and Clefairy will even take less damage as well because of that rain. So we're coming down to predicting switches. As we see, the switch out is on the Clefairy though, and Kyogre comes in, so Kyogre too is going to take those hits quite well, and rain is going to mean that Zacian's going to take those hits well and could possibly get a knockout or near enough damage with a nice Behemoth Blade.
Yeah, no helping hand with taunt afterwards or anything like that, but instead the Protect from the Charizard is going to stop any damage coming out there, while the taunt from the Whimsicott onto the Kyogre, not too worried. That Kyogre would much rather put out big damage, while the Zacian going for the Behemoth Blade onto this Whimsicott. We saw the Whimsicott was holding that Focus Sash in that first game, so Whimsicott, not exactly too worried, still able to hang on, possibly put up some more tricks in the next turn, going for something like a Tailwind, but it is tough when your Whimsicott only has 2 really guaranteed turns on the field when you use one of them on something that's not going to help really as much.
Yeah, it's not very helpful getting that taunt off on that Kyogre. Of course, Ren just going for, like, if there's a follow me, it's going to go into that slot regardless. But Kyogre not being able to protect is also quite handy to know because it is forced to switch to avoid sticky situations. But that also means that Chris can just, be like, oh, you're bringing your Groudon in, I can switch on that turn, that's a sticky situation for me. Max Airstream won't be the nicest thing to see go into it for Christopher's perspective, and we can see a Tailwind go up plus the Airstream. That's a lot of speed boost, as we see Ren's actually hovering over to go for a switch into the Groudon and running nearly out of time trying to pick the moves, showing how to the wire this game is because of, the crucialness to the end result of victory, as Groudon does come in, which is going to reduce the damage of that Groudon, but at the same time, is the boost going to be enough, to knock out what must be knocked out? Is actually going to go for Protect. It is going to be coming down to all these little wide things as Charizard goes like Gigantamax.
Yeah, I mean, it's at that point that Life Orb Kyogre with another Max Hailstorm, if it matches, is that going to be enough to knock out the Charizard? This Charizard isn't holding something like an Assault Vest, so it's not really able to stop that extra damage. It's not holding a Life Orb to put out that extra damage on its own, and having this Gigantamax Charizard on the field to now be immediately matched by this Dynamax Kyogre, who can change the weather up once again if need be, is really daunting for Ren Chengfu, because he's got to at least try and take care of it quickly, but he doesn't have a lot of great tools. He doesn't have a Kartana, he doesn't have a Rillaboom, he doesn't have a Gastrodon, which are such common answers. And, we did not see the Regieleki on that last game. Zacian, though, able to go for a Behemoth Blade first, going to be able to do a ton of damage still into this Gigantamax Charizard and bring it down well under half of its HP. This Charizard doesn't seem to be nearly as bulky as maybe some of the other ones that we've kind of seen in the past, and not having that Intimidate is huge as well. But a G-Max Wildfire is able to get that Zacian off of the field in turn and at least get rid of that big threat to the Pokemon on Ren's side of the field, and possibly allow his Charizard to sit a little bit more comfortably. But if you're Kyogre and you're going for something like a Max Geyser into that Charizard slot, you're not too worried about it hanging out for any longer. So you have to hope, if you're Ren Chengfu, that G-Max Wildfire was worth the trade-off of losing your Gigantamax.
Yeah, it could maybe hoping for a Protect, maybe thinking Chris will not want to take a Max Airstream in that slot, but going for that outright damage and just get rid of it. It is one of the best Pokemon in the format gone, but at the same time, Kyogre has got this longer lasting Dynamax factor. Groudon's not going to like that. Without having anything like Sunny Day on the Whimsicott, it's going to be very scary trying to, sort out what's there. Of course, maybe we could see Whimsicott come in and then a switch out to get Groudon in, straight away with the sun back up. But then again, Calyrex isn't the bulkiest thing and isn't going to enjoy taking any hits that go into that if called correctly. And if anything, a Max Hailstorm into that slot could maybe do just enough to bring it to Hail Chip, and Whimsicott will also take that Hail Chip too, which means that'll be just Groudon sitting there by itself in the hail. If it's a Blizzard, that's going to be a 100% accurate Blizzard. That's a strong Ice-type move as well.
Yeah, and of course we know where the Focus Sash is on this team, right? It's on the Whimsicott, so that means that it's not on the Calyrex. So you can just start firing big shots onto the Calyrex that is going to have to switch in at some point. Any sort of helping hand boost from this Clefairy is going to be able to handle probably anything on Ren Chengfu's side of the field. Like you said, too, if you go for something like that Max Hailstorm into that Groudon, and then you have the extra Hail Chip, you going for a helping hand is just going to be able to put a little bit of extra icing on the cake and maybe allow for Christopher Khan to wrap this game in a way that is much more comfortable. You'll have to possibly go for something like a Tailwind to kind of match speeds and allow for your Calyrex Shadow Rider in the back to be faster, it does just kind of put you in a sticky situation, right? Of how much damage can you do once this Kyogre is out of its Dynamax to maybe prevent it from using something. Oftentimes when they're using Life Orb, they're not even running Origin Pulse. They're oftentimes running just Water Spout and then maybe a couple of other extra coverage moves. So if it's not even running Origin Pulse, is it still going to be able to do enough damage on a double target? Without having the Life Orb damage. But Helping Hand from Clefairy going to be able to boost the power of this Kyogre's moves, and then it actually looks like instead from this Whimsicott, it's going to be that Fake Tears coming out.
Yeah, Fake Tears going into it, it is building up later in the game for when that Calyrex can come in, and Calyrex is really fast, so maybe opting to just hope for the damage as going much as possible. The knockout though on the Groudon with that Max Hailstorm, and of course by proxy the knockout on the Whimsicott, that Calyrex is going to come in empty-handed and have to rely on much damage as possible.
Yeah, I think at this point, right, if you're that Calyrex, you really do need to rely on moving faster and getting a good critical hit. You're not going to be able to knock out the Clefairy, you might be struggling to knock out the Clefairy and everything thanks to that Fringard and thanks to how bulky it can be. But the nice thing about having set up that G-Max Wildfire earlier on in the game is that you're consistently getting some more chip damage down, right? And that consistently helps just put out as much pressure as possible. And, we saw from the back here that it is carrying choice specs, right? So it's got a really strong special attack output. It's not carrying something like a Life Orb, that choice specs itself could do a really nice thing to help out. Christopher Kahn knows at least that there is no Focus Sash on this, so he might be thinking maybe it's Spell Tag to boost the power of Ghost-type moves, or thinking that it's something like Choice Specs, which is, it's something that you really do need to fear, especially when you're dealing with something that can do that much damage. But Christopher still has that last Pokemon in the back, right? So he's still got an extra kind of Pokemon to deal maybe with this Pokemon if he's able to get enough damage. But Clefairy going for a Protect this turn, not trying to get knocked out. The Astral Barrage targeting into that Clefairy is not going to do really anything here. But into the Kyogre, even with Choice Specs, it is not enough to get it close to being knocked out.
Well, yeah, and getting the damage off as much as possible. Resetting the weather is a bit annoying, going for that win with the hail, but it doesn't matter because like we said about the Sash, that is just going to be a straight knockout, and Kyogre going to sit there quite literally swimmingly with its little help there from its Clefairy, and is going to take that game, set and match for Australia, meaning that it's a 4-4, and China are now having to pick up the pieces in the later weeks to try and guarantee a better slot going into the next rounds.
Yeah, and how huge for Australia, right? Because Australia felt like they had a lot to prove. You're facing down China, and that is a ton of pressure, right? Because you're facing down a team that went top 4 and was already automatically seeded into this group. They didn't have to fight through the past 3 weeks like Australia did. However, even in that group now, because there was a tie on the other side of the group, you had Puerto Rico and France. Currently, Puerto Rico is down 2-4 to France, so they still have 2 more games to go. So China and Australia, both at 1 win and 1 tie. And if Puerto Rico loses to France this week, they are out, and it'll be close between China, Australia, and France. So it's a still pretty tight group there. Puerto Rico, I think, has a lot of work to do just to make sure that if they can get that tie, they can hang on. However, one thing I kind of want to go through, and as we kind of wrap into the end of the week here with 1 more week left to go, is to go through the groups and see exactly who is in and who is out and who is close. So, starting with group 1, Poland is in with 2 wins. Taiwan has 1 tie and 1 loss. Spain has 1 tie and 1 loss. And Uruguay is out with 2 losses.
Yeah, so that group is, it's one of those close ones. 3 really powerful countries. Poland, known a lot more for its position in the European scene. And of course, back in old days, you had Rest EU, who had a lot of Polish players in. But Taiwan and Spain battling it out. 2 really well-known countries globally, and Spain, being a powerhouse last season, at the threat of going out if the ties don't go their way. And that could be really scary, but also really poetic. I believe Taiwan didn't get too far last season and are looking to have that redemption story and go through further above and beyond and to have a nice set of wins. And like I said, it's just nice to see Poland on top, because I can't quite remember how Poland finished last year, but I think they only just missed out last year as well. So nice to see them getting a guaranteed top 16.
Yeah, and moving on to group two. Group two, who we actually were able to see some matches between Brazil and Norway today. Brazil and the United States have both already guaranteed their move on into the playoffs, and they are playing each other next week. So they're playing each other for some really important seeding. However, Sweden and Norway are both out with 2 losses, and they're facing against each other next week. So neither of those two teams are going to be able to possibly knock down Brazil or USA with some rough differentials. And then, group three, the United Kingdom, Italy, Peru, and Ecuador. That's not even close to resolved yet. There is a lot of still some more games left to be played, but that group I know hasn't been incredibly tight. That was probably the group of death that was pulled. So there's still it sounds silly. It sounds like a football thing, but there's still a lot more Pokemon left to be played for that. So I'm sure all of our co-commentators, Kana, who are on the UK team are probably biting their nails with this last week left to go. But group four, incredibly close group. Thailand has 1 win, 1 tie. Hong Kong has 1 win, 1 loss, and they play Thailand next week. India has 1 win and 1 tie, and Costa Rica is the group that is out with 2 losses. So that one we were able to also see in our first match today between Hong Kong and India, and I'm excited to see how that one wraps up.
Yeah, that group again is a lot of countries that are condensed like their local scene. So seeing all these teams having to fight out, who takes it out on top. Costa Rica, I haven't seen that much of an international scene, but it's nice to see them get into these later stages of the big tournaments like the World Cup. And India with a lot of American players as well is showing how ties to these big countries is going to be one of the keys to winning. But Thailand and Hong Kong, having their Asian circuits, having the best of one, it's nice to see them come through in best of 3 tournaments and really push forward to try and say just because we've got something a bit different doesn't mean we're going to fail at what is like the usual for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly, right. And having groups being that close is always really exciting because it means at least next on that next week of matches, it'll be something at least nice for us to kind of pay attention to. Sorry, forgive me. Now, though, moving on to group 5. Also, again, a close group. This has been a really exciting group stage because the groups are so close. Japan is in with 2 wins, and I know Japan has a lot to prove after their loss to France last year that knocked them out of the playoff stage, I believe. The Philippines are 1 tie and 1 loss. They play Japan next week. Singapore is 1 tie and 1 loss, and Germany is 1 win, 1 loss. So Germany and Singapore will be playing each other in the next week as well. So it's still really close. Japan at least is in. The other 3 teams have to kind of vie to at least either get in themselves or possibly knock out a different team that they don't want to move forward if they kind of know at the end of next week if they are out. And then moving on just down the numbers, group 6 was the group that we just casted. So that was Hong Kong and Australia. China and Australia and Puerto Rico and France that I spoke about a little bit earlier. Group 7, South Korea, Mexico, and the Netherlands are all at 1 win and 1 loss. The only team that is left, Vietnam, is out with 2 losses. So next week, Netherlands versus Vietnam and Korea versus Mexico. So beyond Vietnam, all of those teams have a shot, and that seeding is not defined yet. So these teams still need to fight to possibly try and get into that first seed because then they will be playing a second seed during the playoffs. And then the Group 8, which was the group that we were able to cover in with the match prior with Sebastian Gomez and Nils. All 4 still have a shot. So currently the order of ranking is Canada, Chile, Argentina, and Switzerland. So there's still plenty of room there for some interesting things to kind of happen between Group 8. So that's probably the closest one so far. But for everybody at home who's been paying attention and following along, whether you are playing or if you're just watching, there is a lot of high stakes matches that are going to be played out next week.
Yeah, and these like the next week going into last week, even for teams who maybe haven't quite made it, that is going to be their world's prep. That is going to be their chance to maybe get a cheeky win that is that 1 win, like a point shaved off of these teams going through. In some of these groups where it's super close, that win is going to be everything for them. A tie could even be everything for them. But some of these teams, like Costa Rica, Vietnam, other teams that are out, it could be friendly. I was going to say in Group 2, we have got 2 countries that are going to love playing together, which is Sweden and Norway, 2 neighboring countries which have a long history in both Pokemon and does everything really. So that's going to be fun to watch. I hope we can cast some games of that. But other than that, like I say, it's going to come down to the wire of you're playing for your country's victory or you're playing for another country in your group, maybe you're friendly with, to go ahead and get that victory and have the chance to get that crown and possibly the prize pool we have at the end of this tournament.
Yeah, exactly. And, now moving on from, just the matches of today and this week, let's give a little bit of a plug to the socials for Victory Road. There are a lot of places that you can find them. You can find them on Twitter at VGC Victory Road, YouTube, youtube.com/Victory Road VGC, twitch.tv/Victory Road VGC, the Discord as well, which is also Victory Road VGC. All of the information available is on www.worldcupvgc.com. So not only are all of the matches that we've been talking about, there's still great opportunities to kind of get a lot of information, a lot of breakdown, seeing what these trainers are using. And on the YouTube as well, not only are all the matches that we cast put up on YouTube, but there are extra matches every single week that are put up on the YouTube channel to watch as well. So there is no shortage of World Cup coverage this year. And if you're not taking advantage of all of it, you definitely should be, because we have some incredible resources that we've been able to kind of put forth, brought to you guys by really an incredible amount of hard work on the staff behind the scenes.
Yeah, the staff put a lot of work into these, and the content we see at the end of it is always something glorious to watch. Of course, Victory Road offer us different forums to go on, such as looking at teams that have been used. There's a massive pool of teams that have been worked together by the staff to come together, and it's always amazing how that community come together and give us the teams. And we've always had that sort of hub in VGC, and I would say Victory Road is probably one of the best ones we've had to do that. And it's just nice to see them coming together and hosting new tournaments as well.
Absolutely. A huge shout out from us to them, and I'm sure from the viewers as well, how important Victory Road is and how much work they put into this World Cup. But as we wrap up the week for the week 2 of this group qualifiers, the group stages here, moving on. One more week left to go. Again, the Victory Road World Cup of Pokemon VGC. We are happy to be sponsored and very thankful to be sponsored by Metafi, GG Tour, and Elgato this year. So again, guys, next week is going to be crazy, right? So you have to kind of stick around, follow along with the matches, keep up with the socials, keep up with YouTube, with the website. And when we come back next week with our matches to cast, as we inch closer to Worlds, which feels like it's so close and yet so far away, the matches should be getting even more intense and more exciting. So thank you so much for watching this weekend. It has been a pleasure to cast for you, both myself, Kana, and David Partington, who is also behind the desk with us today. So we will see you guys Friday, about 4 o'clock UTC. So definitely stay tuned to the socials and stay tuned to the Twitch in a week's time.